Welcome to Starship TV. This mega movie marathon includes 25 films. All these films were very good, and we highly recommend each of them. We hope you enjoy our audio overview of these excellent films and turn on captions if you want to read along. Let's begin with our first film. The More the Merrier 1943. Studio, Columbia Pictures. Director, George Stevens. Synopsis, set during the World War II housing shortage in Washington, D.C., the story follows Connie Milligan, who reluctantly rents part of her apartment to eccentric Benjamin Dingle, only to find him subletting half his share to soldier Joe Carter. Romantic entanglements ensue in this screwball comedy. Interesting facts: Jean Arthur initially did not want to make the film, but it became one of her most famous roles. Charles Coburn won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Actors, characters: Jean Arthur as Connie Milligan, Joel M. Correa as Joe Carter, Charles Coburn as Benjamin Dingle. Portrait of Jennie 1948. Studio, Selznick Releasing Organization. Director, William Dieterle. Synopsis: a struggling painter meets a mysterious young girl in Central Park, who appears to age rapidly each time they meet. Her identity and tragic past gradually inspire his artistic masterpiece. Interesting facts: noted for its use of tinted sequences and a technicolor finale to create an ethereal mood. Adapted from Robert Nathan's novella. Actors, characters: Jennifer Jones as Jennie Appleton, Joseph Cotton as Eben Adams, Ethel Barrymore as Miss Spinney. Mr. Deeds Goes to Town 1936. Studio, Columbia Pictures. Director, Frank Capra. Synopsis: Longfellow Deeds, a small-town man, inherits a fortune and moves to New York City, where his kindness and eccentricity attract both admiration and exploitation. Interesting facts: won the Academy Award for Best Director for Capra. Its success helped establish Gary Cooper's star status. Actors, characters: Gary Cooper as Longfellow Deeds, Jean Arthur as Babe Bennett, Lionel Stander as Cornelius Cobb. Tobacco Road 1941. Studio, 20th Century Fox. Director, John Ford. Synopsis: Jeter Lester and his impoverished family struggle to survive in rural Georgia during the Great Depression. Interesting facts: Ford softened the novel's darker themes to make the story acceptable under the production code. Actors, characters: Charlie Grapewin as Jeter Lester, Marjorie Rambeau as Ada Lester, Jean Tierney as Ellie Mae Lester. Nurse Edith Cavell 1939. Studio, Warner Bros. Director, Herbert Wilcox. Synopsis: British nurse Edith Cavell aids Allied soldiers in escaping German-occupied Belgium during World War I. Interesting facts: Anna Neagle's performance brought renewed attention to Cavell's heroism. Actors, characters: Anna Neagle as Edith Cavell, Edna May Oliver as Madame Rapard, George Sanders as Captain Heinrichs. East of Fifth Avenue 1933. Studio, RKO Pictures. Director, Albert S. Rogel. Synopsis: Chick, a down-on-his-luck man, finds his fortunes intertwined with the varied lives of residents in a Depression-era boarding house. Interesting facts adapted from a play by Alan Brooks and Max Simon Ehrlich. Actors, characters: Wallace Ford as Chick, Mary Carlisle as Peggy, Dorothy Tree as Evelyn Nelson. Among the Missing 1934. Studio, Universal Pictures. Director, Albert S. Rogel. Synopsis: Jerry Fay becomes entangled with a criminal gang while searching for his missing sister. Interesting facts: a compact crime drama typical of Universal's 1930s output. Actors, characters: Richard Cromwell as Jerry Fay, Henrietta Crosman as Grandma Coots, Billy Seward as Helen. 10 Cents a Dance 1931. Studio, Columbia Pictures. Director, Lionel Barrymore. Synopsis: taxi dancer Barbara O'Neill falls in love with Eddie Miller, a man she helps financially, only to have him betray her. Interesting facts: based on the popular song of the same name. Barbara Stanwyck's performance elevated the melodrama. Actors, characters: Barbara Stanwyck as Barbara O'Neill, Ricardo Cortez as Bradley Carlton, Monroe Owsley as Eddie Miller. The Bad Sister 1931. Studio, Universal Pictures. Director, Hobart Henley. Synopsis: Marianne Madison falls for a charming con artist, while her sister Laura leads a more virtuous life. Interesting facts marked the film debut of Bette Davis. Actors, characters: Conrad Nagel as Dr. Lindley, Sidney Fox as Marianne Madison, Bette Davis as Laura Madison. Souls at Sea, 1937. Studio: Paramount Pictures. Director: Henry Hathaway. Synopsis: Sea Captain Michael Nuggan Taylor and his friend Powda face moral dilemmas during an anti-slavery mission in the early 19th century. Interesting facts: won the Academy Award for Best Assistant Director. Noted for its sea disaster sequence. Actors, characters: Gary Cooper as Michael Nuggan Taylor, George Raft as Powda, Frances Dee as Margaret Terryton. Hell's House, 1932. Studio: B.F. Zeidman Productions. Director: Howard Higgin. Synopsis: Jimmy Mason is sent to a brutal reform school after unwittingly assisting in a crime. Interesting facts: early starring role for Bette Davis before her Warner Bros. breakthrough. Actors, characters: Junior Durkin as Jimmy Mason, Bette Davis as Peggy Gardner, Pat O'Brien as Matt Kelly. The Kid from Left Field, 1953. Studio: 20th Century Fox. Director: Harmon Jones. Synopsis: young Christy Hunter helps manage a struggling baseball team with guidance from his father, a former ball player. Interesting facts: later remade for television in the 1970s. Actors, characters: Dan Daly as Larry Lefty Hunter, Anne Bancroft as Marion, Billy Chapin as Christy Hunter. Ball of Fire, 1941. Studio: Samuel Goldwyn Productions. Director: Howard Hawks. Synopsis: Professor Bertram Potts and a group of scholars are thrown into chaos when nightclub singer Sugarpuss O'Shea hides from the police in their home. Interesting facts: inspired by the Snow White story, Barbara Stanwyck earned an Oscar nomination. Actors, characters: Gary Cooper as Professor Bertram Potts, Barbara Stanwyck as Sugarpuss O'Shea, Oscar Homolka as Professor Gurkakov. Jitterbugs, 1943. Studio: 20th Century Fox. Director: Malcolm St. Clair. Synopsis: Stan and Ollie get mixed up with swindlers while posing as musicians. Interesting facts: one of Laurel and Hardy's later films, blending musical comedy with con artist antics. Actors, characters: Stan Laurel as Stan, Oliver Hardy as Ollie, Vivian Blaine as Susan Cowan. Flame of Barbary Coast, 1945. Studio: Republic Pictures. Director: Joseph Kane. Synopsis: Montana cowboy Duke Fergus falls in love with saloon singer Flame and becomes entangled in San Francisco's gambling scene. Interesting facts: nominated for 2 Academy Awards, including Best Score. Actors, characters: John Wayne as Duke Fergus, Anne Dvorak as Flame, Joseph Schildkraut as Titus Gentling. Cluny Brown, 1946. Studio: 20th Century Fox. Director: Ernst Lubitsch. Synopsis: Cluny Brown, a spirited young woman, disrupts the British class system when she becomes a parlour maid and befriends refugee Adam Belinsky. Interesting facts: Lubitsch's final completed film before his death. Actors, characters: Jennifer Jones as Cluny Brown, Charles Boyer as Adam Belinsky, Peter Lawford as Andrew Carmel. The Talk of the Town, 1942. Studio: Columbia Pictures. Director: George Stevens. Synopsis: political fugitive Leopold Dilg hides in Nora Shelley's house, only for her to invite law professor Michael Lightcap, who unknowingly befriends him. Interesting facts: nominated for 7 Academy Awards. Actors, characters: Cary Grant as Leopold Dilg, Jean Arthur as Nora Shelley, Ronald Colman as Professor Michael Lightcap. My Father's Little Dividend, 1951. Studio: Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Director: Vincente Minnelli. Synopsis: Stanley Banks faces chaos when he learns he is going to be a grandfather. Interesting facts: Spencer Tracy and Elizabeth Taylor reprise their roles from Father of the Bride. Actors, characters: Spencer Tracy as Stanley Banks, Joan Bennett as Ellie Banks, Elizabeth Taylor as Kay Dunstan. There's That Woman Again, 1939. Studio: Columbia Pictures. Director: Alexander Hall. Synopsis: Newspaper editor Bill Reardon and his wife Sally become involved in a murder investigation. Interesting facts. Sequel to There's Always a Woman. Actors, characters: Melvyn Douglas as Bill Reardon, Joan Blondell as Sally Reardon, James Gleason as Detective. Molly and Me, 1945. Studio, 20th Century Fox. Director, Louis Seiler. Synopsis: actress Molly Barbary becomes a housekeeper in an upper-class household and transforms the lives of those she serves. Interesting facts. A warm blend of comedy and sentiment with Gracie Fields in her American film debut. Actors, characters: Gracie Fields as Molly Barbary, Monty Woolley as John Graham, Roddy McDowell as Jimmy Graham. Holy Matrimony, 1943. Studio, 20th Century Fox. Director, John M. Stahl. Synopsis: painter Priam Farrell poses as his deceased valet to avoid public attention, leading to humorous and romantic complications. Interesting facts. Based on Arnold Bennett's novel Buried Alive. Actors, characters: Monty Woolley as Priam Farrell, Gracie Fields as Alice Chalice, Laird Cregar as Claire. Three Faces West, 1940. Studio, Republic Pictures. Director, Bernard Vorhaus. Synopsis: John Phillips, a doctor, and his daughter Lenny flee Austria during the Nazi occupation and settle in an American farming community. Interesting facts. One of John Wayne's lesser-known wartime dramas, with strong anti-Nazi themes. Actors, characters: John Wayne as John Phillips, Sigrid Gurry as Lenny Braun, Charles Coburn as Dr. Braun. Manhunt, 1941. Studio, 20th Century Fox. Director, Fritz Lang. Synopsis: British hunter Alan Thorndike stalks Adolf Hitler before World War II, is caught, and escapes, sparking a chase across Europe. Interesting facts. Early Hollywood film openly critical of Nazi Germany, released before America entered the war. Actors, characters: Walter Pidgeon as Captain Alan Thorndike, Joan Bennett as Jerry Stokes, George Sanders as Major Queef Smith. You're watching Starship TV. Be sure to like, comment,